So in terms of what we're going to look at today, we're going to take a look at the innovation agenda of Global News. And Global's been looking at new ways to produce news content for about 10 years. And you'll hear from both Riza and Eamon, but they're going to take you through the process of some of the things that Global's been doing. And really what they've been trying to do is try to produce the news faster, try to be more efficient, try to really increase how much we're able to collaborate, and then make sure that the content's available for multiple platforms all at the same time. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. In terms of the news coming out of this building, the only thing that comes from this building on Global is the Global Toronto Morning Show. Of course, Global News is produced up at 81 Barber Green. And we are looking to have a tour of that facility towards the summer or early fall. And we're going to have those details for you in a moment. So first, it's my privilege to introduce Riza Saifu. And Riza is the Director of News Technology for Chorus Entertainment's conventional television network, Global. And he's responsible for a team of 64 technologists in 12 cities across the country, who are primarily responsible for taking care of all the technical aspects of our news production. Riza's career has taken him from an audio mastering engineer for a large audio duplication company to mixing bands on 2-inch Ampex tape. Do you remember those? To mixing music live at festivals and large venues. And I've had the privilege of working with Riza since 1989, so I know all these things are very true. And he's been in the broadcast industry for 30 years as an operator, as well as managing operations and engineering with some of the largest broadcasters in Canada, including Chorus Entertainment, Shaw Media, Bell Media, and Dome Production. So my pleasure to introduce Riza. What do we do these?
I should know how to turn this on. Thanks, Sean. So what I want to take you through today, or this evening, is centralization of news production at Global Television. In order to understand it, I think we need to understand a little bit of the challenges of producing a newscast in today's environment. There's a lot of shrinkage in resources and budgets, and there's a lot of pushback in the field when our reporters and producers are in the field. So just a little video to show you the challenges that the reporters and producers go through on a daily basis.
It was incredible amounts of rain.
The water keeps moving in.
But not, look at that. Like, even in the past 5 minutes, has just flared up.
The situation here in Houston is catastrophic.
It's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write.
Not
Can you give us a chance?
Your organization.
You are attacking our news.
You are fake news.
If you're wrapped up like this and telling lies, you are a radical Islamist.
80% of them are nasty son of a guns.
Bunch of maggots.
These playoff impacts are not current. Please disregard that.
Public library.
We will be releasing that on our terms, not Alan Carter's terms.
The process we have in our country isn't that I report to journalists.
Get behind a tree or get behind a pole.
Police were telling us, get behind a tree, get behind a car.
Lawn care contractor unhappy with the spotlight.
We were sort of pushed down a flight of stairs and his camera spiked into the ground and smashed.
Can you get on my face while I'm busy right now? I can't, sorry. Road is closed, I need you off this road. This is one of the final front lines against the so-called Islamic State here in Iraq.
Mike Drolet has more on her murder and the dangerous times for journalists across the world.
More than 900 journalists have been killed doing their jobs. Reporting the truth has never been more dangerous.
Like most good stories, it started with a tip.
No more chemicals in the valley!
Do you expect that you're going to get cancer too?
Why did it take global TV to finally get the government to accept the request?
93 people are shot and killed by their own hand or someone else's every day.
We have some friends.
Keep calling 310 kids because those phones are going to stay open.
I want to thank Global News.
Just want to say thanks to Global for helping with this. Political fallout tonight from a Global News investigation. Miami, Washington, Vancouver,
Quebec City,
Ottawa,
Halifax,
Montreal,
Toronto,
Calgary.
At Global News, we're anything but traditional. We constantly seek to break new ground.
So as you can see, frontline folks are facing challenges on a daily basis. They're getting assaulted, they're getting arrested, they're in the crossfire in conflict zones. And our job as technologists is to streamline their workflows, make their life a little easier, and allow them to tell their stories in a simple manner. So how did we do that at Global News? So back in 2008, we started a project to centralize a news environment. That news environment includes 4 broadcast centers, 7 affiliates, and 13 bureaus. As I mentioned, that was launched back in 2008. So that environment included 11 global stations. So the 4 broadcast centers are located in Burnaby, BC, Edmonton, Calgary, and Toronto. Those are considered the control rooms of this workflow. The studios are the remote studios located in Kelowna, Lethbridge, Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Montreal, and the Maritimes. So how is this all connected? We connected through something we call MediaNet. And MediaNet, this is a highly simplified diagram. So it's not going to have, it's sort of a mesh network of sorts, but this diagram is quite simple to show the primary connectivity between all the affiliates and the broadcast centers. So the broadcast centers are all connected with a 10 gig pipe. Each broadcast center has certain affiliates associated with them as a primary feed. So Burnaby's got a 1 gig pipe to Kelowna. Edmonton has 3 1 gig pipes to Winnipeg, Saskatoon, and Regina. Calgary has a 1 gig pipe to Lethbridge, and Toronto has 2 1 gig pipes, one to Montreal and one to the Maritimes and Halifax. So that's the backbone of how we use our control rooms, share our control rooms across the country to produce newscasts from different locations or different markets. So our news production is a standard scenario of news production. We do the acquisition through normal acquisition of cameras and feeds. We feed it into the Grass Valley Stratus, which does our ingest and storage. Grass Valley Edius is our edit tool. And standard production using telemetrics for robotics, Kahuna for our switchers, and a combination of Calrec and Yamaha for our audio. Goes to master control, gets distributed out, and then goes to the home viewer. And that guy happened to notice that Donald Trump got voted in as president, and I think he's shocked. So our technology partners, and these are just a few of them, that's not all of them by any stretch of the imagination. These are the primaries that we use in order to centralize our control rooms, our production workflow, and to automate our production workflow. So this is a bit of an eye chart, and I'll zoom it in a little bit, but what you're seeing here is Chan. Chan is Burnaby, and it's one of the broadcast centers. We've got various pieces of equipment all tied together, and this is on the IP network, or within Core Center, within the global network. So what you're seeing here is, I'll just zoom it into the top half. What you're seeing here is in red, the inputs. So in essence, it's the satellite feeds, it's ABC feeds, it's Reuters, it's whatever's coming into the ingest system. Down here in the blue, we've got the Grass Valley, and unfortunately, you know, I was hoping this would be a little clearer, but we've got Grass Valley as your ingest. We've got some of the edit systems in Grass Valley. And over in the yellow is represented by the graphics. So we've got ROS expressions. We've got ORAD as our virtual sets. We've got weathermetrics as our, excuse me, as our weather graphics. Over in, no, let's just go down to the bottom here. Down on the bottom, we've got more of the traditional control room devices such as I mentioned, the Kahuna switchers, Evertz multi-viewers, Grass Valley routers. We've got the telemetrics robotics, so, and which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we've got the audio CalRec and Yamaha DMEs. All central to all of this is the Mossart playout system. So we're using Mossart as the automation system to play out the newscast. So we produce the pieces. Control room gets set to do their show. They're doing it live to air, and all those video elements get loaded up into the EMPS, and Mossart triggers all the events. So Mossart will trigger the camera robotics. It'll trigger the switcher to do its switching. It'll trigger the various routers to route to the proper signals. It triggers the graphics, and it'll also trigger audio events. So that's the traditional broadcast center. And there are very subtle differences between broadcast centers, but for the most part, it's all pretty much the same equipment. This is a typical affiliate. So the affiliates, which are, as I mentioned, are just studios. They have no control room associated with them. So they do their news gathering in their local market, whether it's Saskatoon or Halifax. They go out and they shoot their stories. They bring it back in. They do their ingest. They cut it on Edius. They do their local weather. And they've got the robotic cameras in their studios with their anchors. There's some Mossart timers that are set up that are being fed back to the studio, so anchors and talent know exactly where they are in the show. All of this stuff is run through the core switches, which ties back into the broadcast center. The only difference in the system are the two sort of outliers, CFRE, which is Regina, CKMI, which is Montreal. They have smaller control rooms, and they use them from time to time, so their setup's a little different. So they have some of the switcher infrastructure. They've got, some of the more audio infrastructure there, and a little bit more of the telemetrics infrastructure as well. So a little bit about telemetrics and how we use it. So these are our robotics that we've got in our system, in our broadcast system, as well as in our affiliates, where we've got dolly availability, televators that allow us to move the camera up and down and dolly in. That's a old sound person doing camera. And then we've got H-frames in most of our locations. And again, it allows us to position our cameras in anywhere in the XY plane. So the telemetric system interconnect. So the control panels are sitting in the control rooms, in whether it's Burnaby, Toronto, Calgary, or Edmonton. And they control the camera movement and camera positioning and the shot via VLAN. The heads are connected, are serial devices, and they are connected to a device server. So that device server takes that IP information that's being fed to it, converts it to serial data, and controls camera. Cameras cannot be controlled locally or remotely simultaneously. So if someone's got a camera controlled locally, and someone tries to take it over remotely, there'll be a message that pops up on the screen for who's trying to take it over remotely. We've asked telemetrics to maybe feed 120 volts down that line to get somebody off it, but they don't really want to do that. That's of no interest to them. They don't see that as a feature. Control panels, they control pan, tilt, zoom, televator, dolly, camera shading, scene snapshots. So you can set up all your various scenes. So if your shot of commercial is always a dolly in with a zoom to a headshot, you just set that up as your scene, and it'll do that shot every time for you. ORAD. So ORAD is part of our virtual set. So we use virtual sets, and ORAD allows us to basically build any of our sets, and allows it to build it in-house, and allows you to, when you zoom in or do any camera moves, that the set tracks. So it gives it a more realistic look. The advantage for us is that the ORAD allows us, actually I'll go back to that in a minute. One of the things that, the features that ORAD uses is that it does track the telemetrics data and camera data through, it does track lens and telemetrics data, and allows, it feeds that data into the system, and it tracks the background. This feedback's killing me. It also allows us to use hard set pieces as required, so the anchors can interact with the set pieces. Sets are designed and built internally by our graphics department, which allows us to control the cost, allows us to control how the sets are designed, and it also allows us to utilize our graphics folks, to fully utilize our graphics folks. And so speaking of our graphics team, over the years we've centralized graphics we centralized our graphics team. In the past, we've had duplication of work where we've had 11 graphics stations across the country. We've had 11 graphics teams across the country. We've had each station setting their own standards, so their look had been somewhat different between our stations. The senior artists were doing simple work, just doing fonts or cut and paste work. And our graphics were being stored locally, so no one else had access to them. Only people within that local market knew what was there. So what we came up with was essentially a located graphics team. So they're in Toronto, and the way they've set the system up is that it's like ordering a pizza, where you place your order, you place your order, you name what you want to call that item, what type of graphic you're using. So this is, in this case, the monitor loop. It's going to be in the Vancouver market. It's for the evening show. It allows the reporter, in this case Anita, to describe what it is she's looking for, and it also allows for, excuse me, it also allows for the reporter to supply any supplementary graphics they want to use. Once that order is submitted, they get the information back in this manner, where you can now search your graphics job and all the graphics jobs in the graphics queue, what's been requested, what's in progress, what's late, what's pending approval, and what's been approved and ready to go. You can filter your searches in any way, shape, or form. So you can do today's, you can do specialized searches and global national news, yesterday, or all the graphics in the system. Once it's done, or once it's completed, the reporter will get a notification it's done. They can go and they check it out and approve it and move it on to the next step if they want to approve it or ask for changes as required. So what did that get us over time? It allowed us to use our time more efficiently in the graphics world, allowed the senior artists to be able to be more creative, unified our standards, and it provided central storage and archiving for all our graphics work. So in short, it reduced the amount of inefficiency within the system. It allowed the graphics team to expand their knowledge base and their creativity, and it also allowed us to take on more work. So just a little reel from the graphics team and what they do today. So it's a little bit of a long reel, but the graphics folks are very proud of what they do, and they like to show off exactly what they do. And they do some pretty interesting stuff. They not only do for global news, but they also do work for radio and some marketing initiatives. And they also build the sets, as you noticed, some of the 3D sets that were there. So what does this get us at the end of the day? So ours original content, that's what we're looking to do. And provide as much news coverage as we can. So in Toronto, from the Toronto Broadcast Centre, we produce 63 hours news per week. In Edmonton, 66.5 hours per week. In Calgary, 44 hours per week. In Burnaby, 137.5 hours per week. And BC1, 67 hours per week on top of the Burnaby hours. So BC1, for those of you who don't know, is a 24-hour news wheel out of British Columbia, and it's got some live elements to it and some pre-recorded stuff that is in that runs in a wheel. So that's a total of 378 hours of content per week that we produce across global every single week, with the exception of maybe Christmas week when it's a little quieter. And how do we do that? So this big old schedule here is how we achieve this. And one of the things that probably most of you guys have experienced when you're walking through the hallways with a senior management type or an accounting type is they walk by an empty control room and they want to know how we can utilize a control room more efficiently because it's empty. So we've done that. So if you look at the schedule here, Toronto Control Room 1, we start off with the Toronto Morning Show. We record a national element that plays out across the country. The rest of the day is Toronto-centric news. But at the end of the day, we do a Winnipeg 6 o'clock. So we are connecting to the studio in Winnipeg, and we produce their 6 o'clock newscast for Winnipeg and Toronto. But the studio's in Winnipeg, using Winnipeg anchors, using all of Winnipeg talent. Studio 2 is ET Canada. We won't need to talk about that. At Control Room 3, again, we're doing the Winnipeg Morning Show. In the evening, we're doing the 6 o'clock Halifax show, and then we're also doing the 6 o'clock Saskatoon show. In Edmonton, Control 1 carries all of Edmonton news for the day. Control 2 does a Halifax morning show. 10 o'clock, we do the Montreal noon show, and then we do the Montreal evening shows. Calgary does Calgary show all day. Burnaby Control 1, primarily they do the Vancouver newscast, and as well as the global national newscast for the evening. Burnaby Control Room 2, Saskatoon and Kelowna shows, and Control Room 3 does the Regina shows all day. One of the interesting elements here is that BC1 Control Room, as I mentioned before, it's a 24-hour news wheel. We do some live inserts during those periods, and then just playing repeats during those periods. But if you look up here, Montreal, we do the Montreal morning show. So based on time zones, that Montreal morning show goes to air live, 6 a.m. Montreal. But we have crew and staff and technicians in Burnaby at 3 o'clock in the morning, Pacific time, manning the control room there and manning the studio there. Yeah, so how do we do that? This is sort of another look of how we best utilize the time, all our control room times. Barbara Green Control 1 has access or controls the Chorus Key studio downstairs from the morning show, the Barbara Green studios, Winnipeg studios. Control 3 also has access to the Winnipeg studio, Saskatoon, and Halifax studio. The Calgary, Edmonton, the Edmonton control room, the Edmonton control room has, controls the Halifax studio and Montreal studio, and they control their, of course, their local studios as well. Burnaby Broadcast Center, as mentioned before, they do the Saskatoon show, Kelowna show. Control 3 is the Regina show, and BC1 studio control rooms control the Montreal and BC1 studio. So over the past 10 years, this is sort of the arc and the innovation that we've done at Global. 2008, we've we've moved from 14 control rooms to 4. We've gone to the virtual set model. In 2012, 2013, we automated our control rooms. 2013, we started the lowest cost news channel in Canada called BC1. 2014, graphics production was centralized, and 2015 we launched the multi-market content process, which Eamon's going to talk about in a few minutes. But as you can see, that we've been on an ongoing basis tried to innovate the way we bring news to our viewers, and how we attack our challenges of reduced resources and reduced budgets. Any questions? Yeah.
You have a myriad of brands and equipment. Is that strategic? Is there obviously in many instances you'll see a lot of the same brand, but I notice here you have like an element of this, an element of that.
Right. So some of that is strategic for sure, in the sense that what's going to work with what, as I'm sure you know, that there's a lot of this that happens sometimes when you have multiple vendors or multiple manufacturers. So we've gone, our architect team and the folks that have been in charge of exploring this technology, we always look to see what's going to work best from, let's say, getting from point A to point B. And we then work with each of the vendors to say, okay, how can we, if you guys don't fit together now, how can we get you to fit together? Because we're going to invest a lot of time and money, and we're going to do this for the long haul. It's not a one-week partnership. It's going to be a multiple-year, decade partnership for sure. And because I think we're thinking in a strategic and innovative way, that they're on board because this is something new for them too. And is this a business opportunity for that vendor or for that manufacturer? So I think that's how we establish our partnerships.
So you didn't want to be lined up with one supplier?
That's correct, yeah. We definitely didn't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, because that becomes problematic as well, or it can be.
One of the reasons we chose Mossart was because it was able to adapt to different manufacturers and different technologies. Overdrive at the time couldn't do that, so that gave us a little bit of flexibility with the equipment we already had.
Because that's always the problem, obviously, with all these manufacturers, is to get somebody to talk to all these.
Exactly, yeah. Jeff?
Any integration between radio and television?
Maybe. Yes, actually there's lots. That's one of our key focuses this year, is to how do we move radio into TV and TV into radio. So whether it's with workflows, whether it's equipment, whether it's people, whether it's physical locations. We're looking at how we've got a ton of radio and we've got a ton of television stations across the country. So right now, today, we do have, as a matter of fact, CKNW in Vancouver is running our 6 o'clock television news on the radio. And it's the best ratings they've had in that time slot for a number of years. We're doing the same thing in Winnipeg, CJOB. We're running the 6 o'clock newscast on the radio, and their numbers have gone up substantially.
Just a straight audio?
Yeah, just a straight, yeah. And so, there's cross-pollination. There's cross-pollination with the with hosts. So we've got radio folks on television and vice versa. When we have interviews and that kind of thing going on in one of either locations, we share that. So we're using Tie-Line, for example, as one of the technologies where if a television reporter is out in a story, they're doing a hit with a radio station, they pop it up on Tie-Line, it hits the radio network, and they're live doing an interactive piece with radio. Yeah. I saw, yep.
What transport stream are you using between your 10 gig pipe and your 1 gig pipes?
We're using JPEG 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mathematically lossless or visually lossless?
I think it's mathematically, but don't quote me on that one. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
When's the last time you've had some of your links are single links, right? There's no redundancy.
No. So that diagram there was incredibly simple, overly simplified. Just because if I put up the entire network diagram there, it'd be as bad as that little interconnect diagram that I had, where you wouldn't be able to read anything. So yeah, that was just a very oversimplified diagram. It's sort of a mesh where there is lots of redundancy and resiliency within the network.
When's the last time you've had some backhoe fade?
When was the last time we had?
Some backhoe fade.
We had train fade.
We had train fade. Yes, we did. Last summer, yeah. Where there was a derailment and it took out the fiber. Yeah.
How do you deliver the finished product to the BDUs?
I'll leave that. I was pointing at you, Jamie.
Oh,
you can take that.
As far as the BDUs go, so you saw in his diagrams, everything goes into global master control in Calgary. The principal large BDUs all come to this location and to the Calgary Master Control, and they pick up directly.
I see, they pick up.
But smaller BDUs will pick up either from the local station, which we deliver a signal to anyway for the transmitter, or they're picking it up off a shot erect where
Do you
they have that
control the
availability.
quality of that link at all? to make sure that they pick you up in the best possible?
No, typically if the BDU is coming into your building, it's, they are in control of what codec they're going to use.
Yeah.
And also how much they compress it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Reza, sorry, I'm just wondering, when you put up the hours of content, do we have any context comparing to other broadcasters?
We're more, because I'm going to say we're more.
Well, like, you know, what's like an impressive number of hours of content?
I think it is. No, I mean, I think it is. You know, relatively speaking, I think it is a huge number at the end of the day, based on the number of affiliates and the number of broadcast centers we've got. So
more than it used to be for us?
I would say, yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say, yeah.
For
yeah.
news bureaus outside of North America, let's say in London or Europe,
yep.
Middle East, whatever, how is the programming brought back?
So for Washington, for example, or for London, we only have really two bureaus outside of the country, Washington and London. We negotiate deals with third-party. Yeah. So for Washington, I mean, Sean Medina gets us to 60 Hudson, and then level 3 is what we're using from Hudson to Washington Bureau. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much, and happy holidays, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reza. On behalf of SMPTE, we want to thank you for your time and
great.
dedication, and we have a book and
Wow.
a plaque for you.
Well, thanks very much. Oops. Can I break it? Are we doing a picture? Oh.
We're going to picture.
Here we go.
Watch your hand,
Thank
Reza. All right. Thank you, Reza. And next, it is my pleasure to introduce Eamon Zeko. Eamon is the broadcast operations manager for Global Toronto, so he works specifically right on the news production team. And like Reza, I've known Eamon for a very long time, going back into the early 1990s. He has been with Global for 40 years. He looks much younger. I think he started when he was 5 years old. Eamon started as a technical operator for the first few years, doing as a camera operator, video operator, audio, TD, and lighting. He started directing in the early 1990s, incorporated his own company in 1992 called EZ Productions, where he contracted himself out to other broadcasters as a director, producer, technical producer, as well as doing his full-time job. He has worked on 7 Super Bowls and over 50 NFL games as a technical manager, taking care of virtual advertisements. He's also been teaching studio production at Humber College for the last 8 years. And Eamon likes to tell everyone that he loves his job, and he absolutely exudes the fact that he loves his job. So,
otherwise I wouldn't be here for 40 years.
My pleasure to introduce Eamon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Check, check, check. Just going to set this up here.
Let me get that. Right, sorry.
I think I got it.
My bad. You good?
Yeah, I think I'm good. It's pronounced Eamon, not Armin, or Ammon, or Amos, or had every single pronunciation you can imagine. But thank you very much, Sean. I really appreciate you inviting me to be here today and to speak to this esteemed group. I'm not an engineer. I'm a director, so I'm going to speak to you like a director. I know that's the worst case scenario for you people, but that's what I'm going to do today. I actually started, one of the things Sean didn't know, I started as an engineer for a small company called Broadcast Media Services back in the early 80s, 1980, I think, 1979, something like that. But I quickly realized I didn't have the chops to be an engineer, and was lucky enough to get a job at Global. I'd worked at Global part-time before that, and really enjoyed my time there, but thought I was going to be an engineer. Couldn't do it, couldn't hack it, and decided to pursue a career in operations and eventually be a director. But if I had a nickel for every time that I asked an engineer to do a crazy thing, I would be a rich man. And if I had a nickel for every time I reversed that decision, went back to the original design, I'd be a rich man again. So I really appreciate, engineering is the foundation of what we do. And I have to say that I'm really proud to work for some fantastic engineers over the years, and I really understand that they are the bricks and mortar of what we do in the television world and the film world as well. So I really appreciate being here and talking to you today. So I'm going to talk to you about MMC, multi-market content. And just so you know, we started this in 2015, the spring of 2015, where we decided we were going to try this model out and facilitate a bunch of markets. And it worked out really well for us. And we ended up here with the Edward R. Murrow Award for the first ever Excellence in Innovation in Television Production, or Television Network. So as innovators, that's a pretty cool thing to get, but it was a lot of hard work, and we started looking like that. So it was very difficult. In 2015, I got the stats written down here, so just so I get it right, we had where is it here? We had 43 shows a week, 2 markets, Toronto and Winnipeg, and 53 hours of TV news produced per week. And in the summer of 2015, we added 70 more shows per week, totaling 113 shows, added 55 more hours total, and we added 6 more markets, which was pretty amazing if you can imagine adding 6 more markets, because not only is it a technical nightmare to coordinate all that, but the communication factor of trying to coordinate and talk to the markets. You can imagine that if you're somebody in Regina or Saskatoon, we've taken away their dear show, their dear 11 o'clock news that they've been doing for many, many years. And Big Bad Toronto has come along and taken away their TV show. And we're doing it from Toronto with our anchors. So it was a tough sort of road to hoe, if you can imagine, to try and communicate to these people that we really wanted to make their show their own, keep the local content, and deliver a really good product. So the communication factor was one of the harder things to overcome. Here's the agenda today. I'm just going to quickly talk about some things. I'm going to talk like a director. I apologize, and I'll try to answer your questions at the end, but basically I'm going to talk about the multi-market content, give you an overview, applications, thinking ahead, what we're going to do in the future, because you never stop your thinking. You want to continue to evolve and continue to innovate. The MMC technology and how we get a program to air, pre-production, production, and post-production, and also one of the newer things we're doing now is broadcasting live with some new automated technology, which I think you'll find really interesting. I'm going to start you off with a quick video, just so you get the feel.
The most forward-thinking news organization in Canada is at it once more. Multi-market content is our response to a rapidly changing broadcast industry and turns the traditional news production model on its head. In the process, resources have been shifted from news production to news gathering, ensuring we can serve viewers better no matter the platform.
We needed to get our content to a place where we can actually push it out to multiple platforms simultaneously. We need to be able to serve somebody who wants to watch us online at the exact same time that someone else wants to watch us on mobile, at the exact same time that someone else wants to watch us on a traditional television play. The only way we could do that was by creating a central content hub where we can actually pull in content stories as soon as they're done in the community and then push them out to viewers wherever they might be. That's the real genesis of MMC.
This gets more content online sooner, giving globalnews.ca a competitive advantage. And there's the production and anchoring of late-night and weekend newscasts in Toronto for 8 global markets. No longer are the same international or national stories being written and produced multiple times. Most importantly, we have freed up local bodies to tell local stories we simply didn't have time for in the past.
MMC has freed up a lot of resources. It's freed people from the shackles of the news desk, putting it back into what a lot of them wanted to do when they got into journalism, which was tell stories, as opposed to
prepare for the next newscast.
And that's, I think, what MMC has been able to take off of my plate, to take the broadcast side off of it and go, you know what, that's fine. We can take care of this. You need to take care of this. You need to make sure that your community is well served.
In no way does it ever feel, I think, from our perspective, that we are a centralized show. We are very much working on 8 local shows.
News items that have been recorded and packaged earlier form the basis of MMC newscasts. Items are sent from an ENPS rundown to a server playlist. Each server is in standby mode until our master control in Calgary fires a subaudible tone to start the newscast. Breaks are triggered the same way, in reverse, through a tone embedded in the newscast sting that's picked up in Calgary. But forget any traditional notion you may have about pre-recording material. Because our servers are put to air live and monitored by a producer, individual newscast files, about 50 of them per newscast, can be updated, deleted, or shifted around as little as 5 seconds before playout. It's because the servers are put to air live that we can do all of these amazing things. This gives our MMC Center the ability to react quickly to breaking news. And if we truly need to be live, we can be, either for an individual segment or an entire newscast into a single market or many.
Worldwide now, and I do mean worldwide, we're being seen as innovators. We have attracted interest from networks as far away as Europe, from across Canada, from across the U.S., who want to take a look at what we're doing, knowing that we have built something that no one else has, and we're moving to a place faster than anyone else.
So that's what MMC is all about, pretty much. And we have since added 3 more markets, Peterborough, Kingston, and Durham, which are, some of you may know, CTV hybrid TV stations. So they will air half CTV content and half global content, which is another challenge to try and communicate and schedule, and really makes for tough times. We now have 2 master controls. Actually, Global Toronto is sort of a mini master control now, because we have our Calgary master control and Czech's master control, which we are feeding sometimes the same show to both master controls. So it's a difficult, tangled web we weave, but we're getting there. We're getting there pretty well. The other thing I wanted to talk about was something Troy talked about in how we, and Marisa too, how we have become leaders and innovators in our technology. We will have one operator do the Winnipeg morning show for 3 hours, doing directing, producing, running 3 robotic cameras, virtual set, timing the show, and rolling server playback. So 10 years ago, that was 10 jobs. So these efficiencies are things that we have been doing ever since I started at Global. So that's probably why I stayed for 40 years, because it's a fun place to work, and that's why I love my job. But these are the markets we started with: Halifax, New Brunswick, Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon, and Kelowna. We have since given Kelowna back to BC. They are doing MMC with Kelowna in BC, as well as part of BC1. And we've added the 3 markets that I just mentioned. We launched in August 8th, 2015, and we added 68 newscasts a week. And this is what it does. It sustains our business and allows for more frontline news gathering. So the linear, the traditional news model is based on 5 steps: gathering content, build the newscast, develop content, air newscast, and post it online. And of course, the new nonlinear, 5 steps again, but we're able to distribute content to many platforms immediately, as we chunkify the content and record them all separately. They're all playback shows, but each segment is a chunk that we can repurpose anywhere we want to whatever platform requires it. And our MMC applications, we are developing even further. And somebody asked about radio. We're trying to build the MMC model into radio as well. So it's growing. It continues to grow, and that's what we like about it. We don't see an end game. We think that we can continue to repurpose what we're doing in many different platforms. The other radio aspect that we do, we just started doing a show called Employment Hour in 30, which is built off a radio show called Employment Hour. The idea was to use Switcher Studio and bring that radio content to TV. We haven't quite got there yet, and we've just turned the radio show into a TV show. So the integration's coming. We're going to get there, and these are some of the ways we're doing it. This is the new Regina model, which we launched last week. So Regina's now doing their own show again, and it consists of, I believe, 4 playouts, but they're only using 2, I think. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm going out there probably in January to help them build this. I went out last May to give them some training, and they had a fantastic first week. I watched every show, and it looked great. So they've come a long way, which is great, and it's nice to give them back their show, which is really what we wanted to do. So they're going to take care of Regina, eventually Saskatoon, and probably take away the late night shows as well at some point. And I think they're going to launch a 5 o'clock show. So they're going to get really busy there, which is good. This is our model, and we have a really busy workplace. And for the audio engineers in the group, I just want to point out that, you know, this environment, when we built it, we didn't really anticipate what we were getting ourselves into in terms of the noise level. Because as you can see, there's a lot of action going on there. That's the presentation director right over there. And she's sitting beside the robotic camera operator. And then we've got our playouts there. I'm in a bad spot here, aren't I? So there's our playout, there's our presentation director and our robotic camera operator building the show. And they've got the 5 or 6 playouts behind them, editing suites over at this side, and then the production team on the other side. Editors are right there. There's the production team. And I'll just do a quick fly-through for you just to give you a better feel for the space, but feeding back. On the right here, you'll see where the producers, talent, and writers sit. And there's about 10 or 12 of them in there every night, every day. And then on the left, you'll see our production area with the edit suites. And as we zoom in, you'll see that's where our production area is. And our playouts. And then our producers. So it's really, really close. And there are pros and cons to this. And those pros and cons are, first of all, it's very easy, because I sat there and directed, as you saw me in that video several times, cut myself into that. It's very easy to scream across the room and say, what's next? You know, or what are we doing? Is this written right? Is the content there and ready to go? Or the editor might say, we need this recorded right away, or we're not going to make air. So the communication is good that way, but my feeling is these people are, you know, audio control people who, originally this is the way I wanted to build it, where that control area was enclosed so you could quality control the audio and make sure it was right, because nobody else is quality controlling the audio. It's these 2 people here. And they are not only doing editorial quality control, but technical quality control, pronunciations. You can imagine, we're doing a show from Montreal. You better pronounce the French names right, or the show's not going to last long. So that's what they have to do. The technical, editorial, and pronunciations, correct audio levels, factually correct information, and it's not Champs de Mars. You better get that right. It's not Portage in Maine, it's Portage in Maine. So these are things that person has to QC all the time. So do we enclose it? Do we not enclose it? It was a real tough battle. We didn't really know what to do, but we didn't enclose it. So what we did is incorporate a QC operator, which has to, that operator has to play back every single show and make sure everything is correct. Because if it's a fully recorded show, it better be fully correct. You can't make a mistake. A live show, you can make a mistake. So that's our audio configuration. And you heard in that video we just heard about the subaudible tone, that automatically triggers the control to commercial to roll in Calgary. And also on the way back, they embed a sub-audible tone in the commercial to trigger the playout to run again. So pretty much it's hands off. It's all automated, which is good. This is what we use for those audio engineers, again, to monitor audio. It's the LKFS, and really it's our only way to quality control the audio as we are recording it, just to check the levels. That's all we got. And it's worked so far, but we've had some errors, and you know, we try our best to get the best possible product, but you know, errors happen. This is at presentation director sits, obviously. Often we'll roll prompter. If the talent is lazy and doesn't want to roll prompter, they have a foot pedal in the desk, but you will hear the talent go, I don't want to roll it today, can you roll it? So we have a wheel there where and you can see Greg here is rolling prompter. They're also responsible for populating the virtual set with the graphics. That's what the expression screen is up there. They have also their audio remote controller, and they've got a Behringer here that they hard panel they can use to pump up the level or change the level. So this is our technology. The one thing I forgot to put in here is the microphones, which are Sennheisers, and I can't remember what the receivers are, but they are something like they're Sennheisers. But this is typically the stuff we use. My favorite device is the Ultimat. It is a fantastic device that can mat anything out, as I'm sure you guys are all aware. But I'm going to show you a little bit about that. Our playouts are Grass Valley, and that's how we configure it with a rundown, ENPS rundown on the right, and the playout rundown on the left. We load a show by just picking any one of the shows that we have ready to go, load it into the rundown, load it up, and then it's chained. And that's what it looks like when it's chained, with it being surrounded in blue and green line on the top item that's ready. So now we sit there and wait for Calgary Master to trigger the playout with the sub-audible tone. And that'll be on their last break before, let's say, the 11 o'clock news. It'll roll automatically, and off we go. Each item will trigger itself, and it'll just roll down. The producer can change anything at any time by either floating an item or moving items around. If something needs to be moved around, adding a promo. If the timing gets lost a little bit. I mean, you don't have a live weather anchor that you can say, cut 30 seconds out of your weather, because it's already been pre-recorded. So you've really got to monitor the playout. So producer will sit there and monitor every playout as it goes to air. And this time of year we have 5 shows going at once at 11 o'clock. Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Regina news at 10, and Toronto and Montreal news at 11. So it's a busy area along that playout line. That's what the sub-audible tone looks like. I'm sure you're all aware of that and how it plays back. Our virtual set is a green screen, but it's a very small studio. So what we've done, and we were innovators with this as well, by manipulating the virtual set as much as we could. When we were first given this project, we were told the anchor was going to sit at the desk, and that's it. No movement, sitting at the desk, and that's it. But I actually lit at one stand-up position and had our graphic operators build me a set load with every single export I can get so that I could manipulate the set whenever I wanted to and spin it around with the idea of lighting one good stand-up position and moving the set. So the anchor doesn't move, the set moves. And that's the beauty of the virtual set. So here's a beautiful Crystal Gamansi, and you can see she's in the high traffic area, which we have to paint every 6 months. But she's like 6 inches from that wall. And this is what we can do with her. The exact same position. Look at the depth. And it looks like she's in a different part of the studio. And yet she's in the exact same spot. Hasn't moved. And she's beautiful. And then her seated position, we use garbage mats to mat out. You saw that first picture where we had green screen on 2 walls. We don't have green screen on this wall here. So we use garbage mats, for those familiar with the virtual set. And the new Maestro technology has given us some fantastic garbage mats which allow us to really morph and manipulate those mats so we can mat out anything. That, if I could just quickly go back, you can see I've matted out the desk. I've taken a garbage mat and just matted out that desk. It's there, but it's not there. Now, obviously, she couldn't walk behind there, but she disappeared. We had a Halloween thing where our sports anchor dressed up in a green suit and ran out there during the weather and started messing up Anthony Farnell's hair, and you couldn't see the sports anchor, and so it was actually quite a funny little skit. So we like to have some fun with the set as well. So, and there are the garbage mats. So we have a ceiling garbage mat, a floor garbage mat, and a left wall and a right wall. And I've just turned them on so you can actually see them. But obviously they become invisible and they just mat out the set. And we can take these shapes and manipulate them to whatever we want. To, you know, this time of the year, we have to shape our garbage mat to take out that poinsettia. So we can, in a button push, you can change it. So it's really, really user-friendly and great technology. One more quick video.
Canada's Global News is centralized back-end production for 10 local markets.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Now, local teams focus exclusively on news gathering. We beefed up local content significantly. Instead of waiting for the traditional red light, a central team records items individually as they become ready. Each local newscast plays out in real time. Items can be updated as late as 3 seconds before playout. Or we can pause each playlist to go live as required. Thanks to our multi-market content innovation, Global News employs more journalists today than ever before.
So that's our new thing, is going live. Not really new. Whenever the Paris attacks were 2 years ago, we went live into 5 markets simultaneously via the MMC model, just by routing the control room into the playout. So we didn't have to change captioning. Captioning would just call into the playouts, and it was really efficient and really made us think, hey, we can go live anytime we want just by pushing a button and going to a control room or going to a live event source. This technology has really broadened what we're doing, and we're not just recorded playout shows anymore. We have the ability to jump into live breaking weather news if there's a tornado or something happening, or any live event that needs to be live, we can go there. So we're more than just a playout show now. So going live, you see this show has changed as it normally should be. And we have a soft router panel that we would select our live source. And we now have another router panel which gives us the ability to hit a button and go live to that live router source, whatever source we've chosen. We have a line in the rundown that we drag up, which will automatically trigger the live event. And you can see it there represented in the ENPS rundown and represented in the playout rundown. And then once we hit that event, once the playout just triggers down to that event, we'll be live. And you can monitor what your live source is. We're on the playout here, and that's the live source ready to go to air. And it comes with a countdown as well. So what could go wrong? Many things. That's why we have incorporated the QC operator to monitor everything that's happening and make sure that we have quality control on all our production. We didn't start this way. We didn't have a QC operator, but we realized we were doing stuff like, going to the wrong weather. We would be in Winnipeg, and all of a sudden the Montreal weather would come up. It's the same anchor, but he's doing the Montreal weather. So you can't have these mistakes, obviously. And so things like that happen. The wrong scenic background. We've got scenics built for each market. And oftentimes, if the robot operator's not paying attention, they won't change the scenic, so we've got the wrong scenic background up there. That's why the QC operator looks at all that and makes sure it doesn't happen. Or if it does happen, we re-record it. Show's out of order, the playouts jump. It's computer technology, as you know. Things will glitch out from time to time. That's where the QC operator sits. Got an intercom, playout, and a monitor. What they do when they QC is they unchain the clips and chain them back together, whatever section you want. And we want them to watch a segment, not a single item, which you could drag any single item down, but we want them to watch a segment because we want the show to flow like a proper newscast. Otherwise, when we first started, it was sort of chunky, and you could tell that it wasn't a flowing show. This is why when we QC, we want to make sure it flows together and makes sense as you go through the show. So you just chain them back together, drag them down, you can watch whatever section of the show you want to watch. Just click the play button. And when you get into trouble, we've got a get out of jail card. You hit that big red button, commercial will roll. And we've done it. The playout will freeze, and you've got no choice. You've got to go to commercial. So that will trigger the commercial to run automatically. It's right there. Every playout's got one. So, yeah, that's right. That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah.
Does it trigger the sub-audible?
Yeah, it triggers the sub-audible, and the commercial will automatically roll in Calgary, or checks whatever master control we're dealing with. So going forward, these are the things we want to try to achieve. I won't bore you any longer. I'll just try to get through the next steps. We're going to add more local content by including the news and weather and sports anchors from the market, the people that the audience is familiar with, and they know them, so we can team view into any market and grab their anchors and shoot them and add them, as we do with New Brunswick and Halifax now, add them to the MMC shows. We need to add a live CG device because when we do go live, we can't key. So we don't have a live key or a reporter key. These are things we need to do. We can't have no font or a locator to find out where we are. It's very important that we take that into consideration as we go forward, trying to make it look like a live news show. And we want the ability to roll server to provide complete assets, like for instance a voiceover. So typically what we do is we record an anchor read, including the voiceover, without the video. And then it goes to an editor who adds the video, and that just takes too much time. So we need to be able to roll that video in the MMC area so that we have a completed asset as it goes to the editor, and they just top and tail it, send it to the rundown. And of course, the big one is moving content seamlessly from broadcast to radio to online. Very important. That's what we really want to achieve. I just have one more video because as a teacher, as Sean told you, I really have a strong appreciation for the young adult. I think the future of this business is in fantastic hands because these kids are magic. They really are. You think of a person like Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid, 19 and 20-year-olds doing things on the ice we've never seen before. And these kids in our industry are just like that. They just have to be guided appropriately and coached up. And I find that when I first started teaching, I sort of lost their interest. I was like showering them with information, and even though they appreciated the information, you got to entertain them. So what I started building in was one blooper a week that related to what I was teaching. And that seemed to spark them up. They looked forward to coming to my class because they knew they were going to get a blooper. And then they'd listen to me. So this is what I'm going to do for you, is play you a blooper just to entertain you. And this has many different levels of meaning. Number one, the song is called Yes, I Can, which I like to think that we can do anything. And so that's what this song is all about. And you'll see what this fine young lady does. This is circa 1994, just after we bought the first Vinton XY pedestals. The other message, of course, is technology glitches out.
The rush was a little train, but I really was too hard to climb. The bigger train just laughed and said, we glide across the line.
Completely out of control. Live TV.
I know I can. That you were singing, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Never let it die.
She's a pro.
Yeah, didn't stop.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Don't be shy, even try. Yes, I can. We're getting attacked.
Don't say I didn't entertain you. Yeah, that's right. Any questions? I hope I can answer them, if there are any.
Did they fire you on that show?
That was not me. That was not me. That was John Wiley, if anybody knows John Wiley, who is retired now. Yes, sir.
Question going back to your Regina. It looks like you're taking the control room and putting it back in Regina. Did I
Correct. Yeah, we're giving.
Does that go against the business case that originally, in 2008, you consolidated in the various regions that you had?
Well.
You're now expanding once again?
Well, the reason we're doing that, number one, we've eliminated a lot of staff, and I tell my students this too. I don't want it to seem like all this automation jobs are diminishing, because they're growing in other areas like online and radio and some of the things we do outside of the conventional TV model. But we have diminished our staff quite a bit. So what Regina is going to do is not only take over Regina, and I'm not even sure if this is going to happen, but the rumor is they're going to take Saskatoon, they're going to take Winnipeg, and do all those shows with minimal staff, like we're doing with minimal staff. And what we're going to do is then potentially take over Peterborough and Kingston morning shows. So it's more of a moving people around type of thing, but I don't think we're increasing staff. And we really heard the message when we started that they didn't like losing their show to Big Bad Toronto. They really wanted to do it themselves and build their shows like they did. One of the first things that we got from the Prairie specifically was, your show's too slick. We would never produce a show that slick, because that's not what they did. It was local Regina, Saskatoon. Not to say that it was bad, but it moved at a different pace, and so that's sort of the reasoning behind that. And we also needed a redundancy plan. If we had a server failure or, God forbid, some sort of strike, we need somebody to pick up the slack. So Regina was the logical place to put that redundancy in, so that if we had a failure, we had someone that could back us up.
So we launched in August 2015.
Yeah.
How many months before everybody went to bed at night, okay, not worried that there's going to be...
I worked 40 days straight, and it was a tough time because the technology, the engineers did an amazing job. They really did. They really built the system correctly. The problem was, like I said earlier, is the communication and the staffing of it, which was a difficult thing. And to try and wrestle the alligator to the ground was more difficult than anybody ever anticipated. Nobody had ever done it before, so that scared face off the top was what we really were like, because we didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea what the plan was. We were sort of, well, we did know what the plan was because it was laid out to us, but still to make it right and to have it work the way we thought it was supposed to work, was a big challenge. So 40 days for me to answer your question. Yeah, it was tough. It was a tough summer. I'm a golfer, so I did not golf at all that summer, and I usually get like 60 rounds a year because I love to golf, and I belong to a golf course that's right 30 seconds away from my house, so I can get out really quickly. But I couldn't golf at all that summer, which was not good. It was very tragic. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your kind attention. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Eamon, and
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate your time and expertise. And we have a plaque and a
Oh,
book
wow.
in there for you.
Thank you very much.
Really
It's very
appreciate it.
kind.
All right.
Appreciate it.